Hello, friends, and welcome to our resumption of these broadcasts. We've had a little bit of difficulty resuming, thinking that everything was quite ready to go, but there's been some adjustments that had to be made, so in a little bit of a panic, so we're okay now, I think, and I hope you can hear us. We don't have usual way of dialoguing, but something of the dialogue can be handled, and by tomorrow, for the reappearance of the Christ, I think we'll be in pretty good shape after this resumption. I'd like to read you just some fundamental things. It never hurts to review with the Tibetan, because he has these strong statements about what the whole process is. And I'll just share maybe a couple of paragraphs with you. The triangles of light and of goodwill are essentially invocative. Now, they constitute the ABC of the coming science of invocation. It'll be very big during the Aquarian age, and here is the foundation for us. Going on. Now, the strength of these triangles, their strength is dependent upon the depth of feeling in one case and the strength of the will in the other. So even though we're not yet doing these triangles of the will to good, we do bring our will to the story and to the process. So the strength is dependent upon the depth of feeling. You know, the heart has to be opened here, and the strength of the will in the case of the other, the goodwill. I have here given those disciples who are launching this new project, so you can see that this was written, well, maybe some 80 years ago, but it still applies because it has not yet spread across the world the way we would hope that it could. So we have a lot of work to do. I've given those disciples who are launching this new project, which is so close to my heart, he says, a new and useful hint. Now, that's going to be an occult statement, isn't it? When he talks about it being close to his heart. And there's a very advanced stage of discipleship that we call the master in the heart, the Chela in the aura and Chela in the heart. And of course, he's related to Master Kuthumi, I suppose, in that way. He's in Master Kuthumi's ashram, even though he has his own. This work must go on. It is because the entire concept is so new and different to anything hitherto projected that it seems so impossible of achievement. The Triangles project has its incentive in such highly esoteric sources that some disciples regard the work as exceedingly difficult and thus complicate by their thinking its essential simplicity. Others regard it as the simplest thing in the world, and by an emphasis upon the exoteric and the organizational angle, they again hinder the true type of triangle from being created. So I think that when we're active in this work, we cannot, in any cavalier manner, assume that everything is exactly the way it should be, and that somehow we are managing with our friends and associates to create the true type of triangle. But we'll work towards that end, right? Going on, disciples need to be aware of the true proposed plan and find ways to make clear the middle position between the difficulties brought forward and the simplicities which distort. So somehow the noble middle path is required here. It's very interesting. When I had an occasion to meet quite a few times before she died with the last living disciple in the Tibetans group. And she continued to insist that his ashram was at least partially ruled by Libra. Now, if you think about Libra, it is the ruler of the atmic plane. And there the triangles take form. The symbol of that plane is the triangle, or the fleur-de-lis, or some triple structure, the triple flowers. The triangle is found there. And so maybe it is true that on that plane of balanced will to good, there is the root of the Tibetans' participation in this work. But of course it goes much higher. It touches the three Buddhas of activity who were, we remember, planetary logoi in the previous solar system. And Sanat Kumara, well, he may well be, from the Shambhalic perspective, the point within the triangle. And we can also consider the Christ to be, in our triangles, the point within the triangle. After all, we're operating at a lower turn of the spiral, and we are interested in a deeper connection with hierarchy, of which the Christ is the head. There's some, foundational things being said here, and I just think we can remind ourselves of them. He calls it a deeply esoteric enterprise. Now, if we go with the idea of the simplicity of it, we may forget how deeply esoteric this enterprise really is. It's different, he says, to the intellectual and practical work which the men and women of goodwill are asked to do and will do. It is not what some earnest people regard as goodwill work or a phase of the goodwill work. As a matter of fact, as we know, in the Lucis Trust there are two distinct desks, one given to the triangles work and the other given to the goodwill work. The forming of triangles, he says, of light and goodwill, not yet the will to good, okay, but light and goodwill, concerns the reservoir of energy upon the inner and etheric side of life, which will automatically and with full circulatory effect, and this is the point, enable the exoteric work of the men and women of goodwill to make progress. So this reservoir, this etheric reservoir, which can carry some very high energies, promotes the outer work which we all realize is so utterly necessary at this time when so much glamour is stalking the consciousness of humanity. So he says it's not goodwill per se, but the creation of triangles of energy within the etheric body of the planet, which are deliberately qualified by goodwill. Do we get the difference, right? It's not the outer goodwill work, but these etheric triangles are qualified by goodwill and by light. He goes on, the two phases of the work are necessarily complementary to each other, but must not be regarded as one. The triangles of light must be qualified by or become the agents of goodwill, and the two groups are closely interrelated. The men and women of goodwill need to know nothing of these triangles unless it is deemed wise that they are individually advanced enough to react correctly. So we do need to judge, when we speak of these matters, whether we will get a positive reaction or whether it will lead to contention. But, and here's another point that we really have to get in mind when we're impressing upon ourselves the importance of this work, which must go on. He's speaking here of the men and women of goodwill, but their work along the lines of goodwill will be successful or not successful. And he says, I speak from the long-range point of view, according to the intensity of purpose and the depth of love demonstrated by the two groups of Triangle's members. So I think, we can impress upon ourselves here the importance of this particular work, and I think that's what I really wanted to get across to us. Now, obviously we're not really forgetting that, but to keep these things in mind, and what a very responsible work it is for us. Okay, well, as I said, there's been a couple little adjustments here that we've had to make as we get on and rearrange things. So, welcome to all of you, and let's get into our meditation, absorbing light from the higher plane of soul. We'll act as if this is soul light. And that light will pass through the personality and help to regenerate the condition of the various vehicles we have, and especially the first vehicle that we have to regenerate is the etheric vehicle. So that is our first target, in a way, to have an etheric body that's full of light and of higher energies, rather than simply reflecting the instinctual nature. And DK, we're familiar with the idea now that every day we are to have this little visualization before we really start the day. And the interesting visual here shows that the triangle is inverted, and upon the higher mental plane we find the Master, and we find the Angel of the Presence, and together they are associated with this colored triangle of golden, orange, yellow light, which anchors itself in our head center. So let's visualize that happening. And it's a solid triangle, and we do know that while the egoic lotus has many colors in it, though no red in the petals per se, though the lotus may be tinted that way for first-ray souls, orange is the fundamental color, and really the first of the colors to appear as the egoic lotus is being constructed by the angel of the presence on the higher mental plane. So anyway, this orange, golden, yellow light pours down through us, and he asks us, bathe in this as you would bathe in the waters of the sea, and leave the rest to me. So with trust, we see all of our personality vehicles pervaded by this color. And, we try to do this at the beginning of every day if we can remember, whether we sit in a chair before going forth to the day's activities or just sit up in bed and do this. Doesn't take long. And we're connected then with the Master, with the angel of the presence, and this is going into our crown center, which of course is significant, the highest center. The idea is that there is always a triangle hovering above the square. The square is the condition of the etheric body of the non-sacred planets like Earth, Mars, Pluto, and two veiled planets. We don't know exactly the names, but one is a second-ray non-sacred planet, and the other is a fourth-ray non-sacred planet. The first is occultly veiled by the sun, and the second occultly veiled by the moon. So, as far as our system goes, there are 5 non-sacred planets, and their etheric body is not yet characterized by triangles. So we recognize here in a way the beginning of the Masonic apron, where the triangle descends in an inverted manner into the square and makes the letter M, which is an important letter in all manifestation. And we realize that in all of our work we may be, in a way, the square, the fourfold personality, and our etheric field may be still characterized by many squares, but we're working on the method of allowing in the higher spiritual energy. And let's remember that one of the names of souls is the triangles. That's a name for the soul nature. So there will be a pervading of our etheric body by triangularization. Just go to Cosmic Fire around page 169 or 170, and you'll see some of the important triangles in the etheric body as the human being progresses over the many ages. So let's take a little time now. I assume, we all have at least one triangle we're working with, or are in the process of acquiring that triangle, or stimulating it, or gathering it, whatever you want to call it. And we'll have a few minutes where we send forth the light and the goodwill to our fellow soul-infusing personalities who are forming these triangles with us. So let's have some work along that line. Well, there may be some of you who have, a lot of triangles, and this would not have been sufficient time to go through, but there are others who have fewer, and, it's a bit of an approximation. So when you are working in your daily way with your triangles network, take as long as you may need. That's the point. And make sure that the feeling of goodwill in the heart and the light reinforced by the will is with you, so that we really can be effective behind the scenes. Because there is a network being built across the planet, and once that is consummated, and it's still a long way off, I suspect, the interplanetary triangles will be reinforced, and eventually the solar systemic triangles linking the various solar systems in our local cosmic logos, and so it will go. But right now we have the immediate task of learning how to relate to a few spiritual compatriots who want to do this esoteric work and want to render the work of the men and women of goodwill as successful as possible because of the work they're doing behind the scenes. These great beings, the Buddhas of activity, in a way stimulate our planetary network of triangles, and they are definitely associated with Manas, as is the third plane, where the symbol of which is the triangle, the atmic plane. So the story goes that they can, in dire emergency, really stimulate the network. But I think the great beings try not to do too much for us, because they would produce, in the words of Master Moria, if you're going to give everything, you're going to produce a weakling, and they don't want humanity to become overly dependent. So by human hands, by human feet, as it has been reported in the Moria work and in the painting Christ in the Desert, even though the great ones stand by and assist as they can, the job is really ours. So 3 kinds of triangles will be operative here. Our own little network, which we should struggle to build and maintain, and the planetary network, consisting of the triangles work interblended of the many workers along this line, and then finally the Buddhas of activity, and a great heart in the middle, in a way. Of Sanat Kumara, he is the great example of light supernal, love eternal, and peaceful silent will. Now we will realize that the invocation, the great invocation, is a tremendous word of power, and we will realize the invocative nature of this invocation as we think of the triangles work we are doing. maybe we'll get into the new form of the invocation because the word earth was cut off, so hopefully it will involve all of the planets and the will of the great solar logos. I think that triangles do rule the etheric vehicle of the sacred planets, and circles are spheres of the stars like the sun. So we're on our way from squares to triangles to the circles or spheres, building up the network until maybe some 100,000 or so of truly functioning triangles are operative. That's the story that we have apparently received from Alice Bailey. It would take about that many to turn the tide and bring about the real regeneration of humanity on the planet, but that's how powerful this work can be. So even though it's deeply esoteric and so many helpful people in the world know nothing about it, we do know something about it, and we continue with this work that must go on and is very dear to the heart of the Master DK. It's one of the main things that he has promoted. Well, friends, I think tomorrow we have the reappearance of the Christ, and I think we would have gotten some of the bugs out as we're re-beginning, nothing like reaching the moment of the broadcast and finding you don't have everything you quite need, but we're on our way, and glad to be able to resume. And of course this will show up on YouTube and also on Makara, and you're quite welcome to notify your friends, your spiritual friends who might respond to this, of these little Ask Meditations. Some of them go quite deep, of course, and you'd have to be a bit of a reader of Alice Bailey to get into them, but others are right there, understandable by most everybody, and we certainly invite you to share the word of them so that the inner or esoteric work can move forward. Here's, some of the things we do, and you're familiar with them: the Blue Rose Sisterhood and the Moria Federation and University of the Seven Rays, and lots of things are coming out. And don't forget the new PIP test. We'll make sure that you can have an address to write there, so you can have that on your computer, and you can share that too. And we're doing it simply on a donation basis, whatever anybody would like to give, and you'll have the printout as soon as you'll have your Ray printout as soon as you finish. It's a good place to start from. And pretty soon I'll be back broadcasting these Solar Fire Ritual Oratorios. Hopefully I can keep up the rhythm every month, and that's yet another way to participate at the time of the full and the new moon. So many blessings from Tuya and myself, lots of love, and we hope we will be able to see you, tomorrow, and we appreciate your presence and your patience too, because we run into little snags now and then, but and do things we shouldn't, but we try to reach you. That's the point. We try to reach you and to form a group together that really will be of value. So this will be up quite soon, and tomorrow the reappearance of the Christ at the evening schedule, 5 p.m. GMT. Good to see you here, and we'll be in touch. And bye for now.